What if the man you love is the secret that could destroy your entire world? Tristan Hargrove stared at the mirror in his sleek Chicago apartment, the city lights twinkling like distant stars outside his window. At 28, he had everything a man could want on paper: a high-paying job as a financial analyst, a circle of friends from his Ivy League days, and a family back in small-town Ohio that boasted about his success at every holiday gathering. But none of that mattered when the truth clawed at his chest every night. The truth about Eduardo. It had started innocently enough 6 months ago at a corporate event in New York. Tristan was there for a conference on sustainable investments, and Eduardo was the freelance photographer hired to capture the moments. From the moment their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, something shifted. Eduardo, with his warm brown eyes, easy smile, and the kind of confidence that came from living openly as a gay man in the big city, had approached him with a camera in hand. "Mind if I get a shot of that thoughtful look?" he'd asked, his voice smooth like aged whiskey. They talked for hours that night, long after the event ended, walking the streets of Manhattan until dawn. Eduardo shared stories of his life as a 30-year-old photographer chasing beauty in a world that often overlooked it. Tristan, guarded as always, listened more than he spoke, but something in Eduardo's presence made him feel seen for the first time. Not as the straight-laced son, the reliable brother, the promising executive, but as Tristan, the man with dreams and fears he never dared voice. Their first date was a quiet affair in a hidden cafe in Brooklyn. No grand gestures, just coffee and conversation that flowed like it had been waiting years to happen. Tristan felt the walls he'd built around his heart crack with every laugh, every shared glance. But back in Chicago, reality hit hard. His family didn't know. His colleagues didn't suspect. And the world? The world had made it clear that men like him, men who loved other men, belonged in the shadows. The first crack appeared when his older brother, Mark, called one evening. "Hey, little bro, Mom says you've been acting distant. Everything okay at work?" The conversation turned casual until Tristan mentioned meeting a friend in New York. Mark's tone changed. "A friend, huh? Better not be one of those types. You know what Dad would say." The implication hung heavy, mockery wrapped in brotherly concern. Tristan hung up, heart pounding, wondering how long he could keep Eduardo a secret. As weeks turned to months, their relationship deepened. Eduardo flew to Chicago on weekends, and they explored the city like tourists in their own lives. Picnics in Millennium Park, late-night talks on the lakefront. Tristan began to dream of a life where he didn't have to hide. But the fear was always there, whispering that revealing the truth would mean losing the family that had shaped him, the career he'd sacrificed for. Then came the misunderstanding that nearly broke them. Eduardo, sensing Tristan's hesitation, suggested they meet his family. "Just dinner, no pressure. My parents are cool with it." But Tristan panicked, canceling at the last minute with a lame excuse about work. Eduardo's text came later. "I get it. But if we're going to build something real, you can't keep me in the dark forever." The words stung, forcing Tristan to confront the internal conflict he'd avoided. He spent the night pacing his apartment, replaying every conversation with his parents, every joke his father had made about those people at Thanksgiving. The weight of it all pressed down until he finally called Eduardo back at 3 in the morning. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm scared, but I don't want to lose you." That night they talked until sunrise, and for the first time Tristan admitted out loud what he had buried for years. He was in love with a man, and that love was worth fighting for. Eduardo arrived in Chicago the following weekend with a duffel bag and a quiet determination. They spent the days wandering the Art Institute, hands brushing but never quite holding in public, always aware of the sideways glances from strangers. Eduardo never pushed, but his patience carried its own pressure. "I came out when I was 17, he told Tristan one evening on the Navy Pier. "My parents cried, but they stayed. Yours might surprise you too." Tristan wanted to believe him, but the memory of his father's voice, loud and certain at every family dinner, kept him silent. At work, the tension escalated when a colleague, Sarah, spotted them leaving a restaurant together. She didn't say anything at first, but the office whispers started soon after. "Tristan's been different lately," someone muttered in the break room. He overheard it while grabbing coffee and felt the familiar knot tighten in his stomach. That same week his mother called. Mark says you've met someone special. Bring her home for Christmas, honey. We want to meet her. The assumption hit like a slap. Tristan mumbled something noncommittal and hung up, then sat on the floor of his apartment with his head in his hands. Eduardo found him there hours later and simply sat beside him. No questions, just presence. The betrayal came without warning. Sarah, pretending to be supportive, invited them both to a team happy hour. Tristan hesitated but went, hoping to quiet the rumors. Instead, she cornered Eduardo at the bar and asked pointed questions about their friendship. The next morning, an anonymous email circulated in the department. Photos of Tristan and Eduardo laughing too closely, captioned with crude jokes. Tristan's boss called him in for a chat. "We don't discriminate," the man said, "but optics matter. Maybe keep personal matters private." The message was clear. Tristan left the office that day feeling smaller than he ever had. The career he had built suddenly fragile. That night he and Eduardo argued for the first time. "I can't keep pretending," Tristan shouted. "Every time I look at you, I remember what I'm risking." Eduardo's eyes flashed with hurt. "And every time I look at you, I remember what you're asking me to accept, being your secret." They slept on opposite sides of the bed, the silence heavier than any words. In the morning, Eduardo packed his bag, but before he left, he turned back. "I love you, Tristan. But love without honesty is just fear wearing a nicer coat." The door closed softly, and Tristan realized he had never felt so alone in a city of 3 million people. Weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and half-finished reports. Tristan threw himself into work, trying to outrun the emptiness. He avoided calls from home, deleted Eduardo's texts before reading them, and told himself this was for the best. But the hole in his chest only grew. One rainy afternoon, he found himself standing outside the photography studio where Eduardo had once shown him early shots of their time together. The door was locked, but through the glass he saw Eduardo at his desk, head bent over prints. Something broke inside Tristan. He knocked. Eduardo opened the door without a word. They stood there in the dim light, rain dripping from Tristan's coat. "I was wrong," Tristan said. "I thought hiding would protect me, but it only made me disappear." Eduardo studied him for a long moment, then pulled him inside. They talked until the rain stopped, about family expectations, about the fear of disappointing the people who raised you, about the courage it took to choose yourself. That night, they made a pact. No more secrets from each other. The rest of the world could wait. But the world refused to wait. Tristan's brother Mark showed up unannounced in Chicago after hearing rumors from a mutual friend. "Dad's been asking questions," Mark said, voice tight. "He saw a picture online. Somebody tagged you at a gallery opening with that photographer guy. Is it true?" The confrontation in Tristan's living room was brutal. Mark paced, fists clenched. "You're throwing away everything. Mom's health, Dad's pride, the family name. For what? Some phase?" Tristan stood his ground, voice shaking but steady. "It's not a phase. It's who I am." Mark left without another word, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Tristan sank onto the couch, the echo of his brother's disappointment ringing louder than any argument. Eduardo arrived later, carrying takeout and quiet strength. They ate in silence until Tristan finally spoke. "I think I just lost my family." Eduardo set his fork down. "You didn't lose them yet. But you might have to let them lose the version of you they invented." The words stayed with Tristan through the night, planting the first seed of a different future. Spring arrived with a proposal neither of them saw coming. Eduardo booked a private rooftop in downtown Chicago at sunset. He had spent weeks curating a series of photographs, candid shots of their quiet moments, the laughter, the tears, the growth. As the city glowed beneath them, Eduardo dropped to one knee and opened a small box. Inside was a simple silver band and a single print. The two of them on the lakefront the night they first said, "I love you. Marry me," he said. "Not because it's easy. Because it's us." Tristan's answer was a kiss that tasted like salt and hope. Planning the wedding became its own battleground. Tristan's family refused to respond to the invitation. His mother sent a single text. "We love you, but we can't celebrate this." Friends from work offered awkward congratulations or sudden distance. Only Eduardo's parents flew in from California, warm and accepting, reminding Tristan that chosen family could heal what blood sometimes broke. They chose a small venue in Lincoln Park. Nothing extravagant, just close friends, Eduardo's family, and a handful of colleagues who had stayed loyal. Eduardo insisted on photographing the day himself. "These pictures will tell our story better than any words," he said. The night before the ceremony, Tristan stood on his balcony, city wind whipping around him. He thought about the boy he had been in Ohio, terrified of his own reflection. He thought about the man he had become, still terrified, but no longer willing to hide. When Eduardo joined him, they didn't speak. They simply leaned into each other, the weight of every choice they had made pressing between them like a promise. The wedding day dawned bright and impossibly clear. Sunlight poured across the park as Tristan walked down the makeshift aisle between folding chairs. Eduardo waited at the end, camera slung over one shoulder, eyes shining. The ceremony was short and honest, vows written in late-night emails, rings exchanged with trembling hands. When they kissed, the small crowd cheered, and for the first time Tristan felt the world tilt toward acceptance rather than rejection. Eduardo worked quietly throughout the reception, capturing stolen glances and genuine laughter. Later that night, he uploaded a single album to Instagram with a simple caption. "6 months ago, he was afraid to hold my hand in public. Today, he married me in front of the city we love. This is what bravery looks like." The first likes trickled in. Then the shares. By morning, the post had 30,000 views. Comments flooded in, some cruel, some curious, many moved. A major news outlet picked it up by noon. Chicago couples' wedding photos spark national conversation on love and identity. The headlines spread like wildfire. Tristan woke to his phone exploding. Messages from old classmates, distant cousins, even his boss. Some were supportive. Others were the same tired mockery he had heard for years. But the tide was shifting. A popular LGBTQ+ influencer reposted the album with the words, "This is the future we're fighting for." Millions saw it. And somewhere in Ohio, Tristan's mother opened her laptop and stared at the photos for a very long time. The backlash arrived first. Anonymous accounts flooded Eduardo's page with hate. Tristan's father left a voicemail filled with disappointment, so thick it choked the speaker. Mark texted once, "You made your choice. Don't expect us at Christmas." But then the unexpected happened. A local Chicago news crew showed up at their apartment asking for an interview. Tristan almost refused, but Eduardo squeezed his hand. "They want the story. Let's give them the truth." The segment aired that evening. Tristan spoke about the fear, the betrayal, the long nights of doubt. Eduardo talked about patience and the power of being seen. The anchor ended with a simple question: what changed? Tristan looked straight into the camera. "I stopped hiding." And the world started looking. Over the next weeks, the comments shifted. Strangers wrote letters thanking them for giving them courage. A conservative radio host who had mocked the photos on air issued a public apology after his own son came out. Tristan's mother called one rainy afternoon. Her voice cracked. "I saw the pictures. I saw you, really saw you. I'm sorry it took me so long." They didn't hug over the phone, but the silence that followed felt like the beginning of repair. 6 months later, Tristan and Eduardo stood on the same rooftop where the proposal happened. The city stretched below them unchanged, yet everything felt different. Tristan had switched firms to one with stronger diversity policies. Eduardo's photography series on queer love had been picked up by a gallery. They still faced sideways glances on the street, still fielded awkward family questions. But the fear that once lived inside Tristan had been replaced by something steadier, certainty that the man beside him was worth every risk. They leaned against the railing, fingers laced openly. Somewhere below, another young man might be staring at his own reflection, wondering if the secret he carried would destroy him. Tristan hoped that somewhere, their story would reach that boy and whisper the answer they had fought so hard to prove. It doesn't have to. In the end, this story reminds us that love, in all its forms, has the power to challenge and ultimately transform the prejudices that bind us. Tristan and Eduardo's journey teaches that hiding your truth may feel safe, but embracing it brings freedom and unexpected allies. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Be authentic, for in doing so, you not only find yourself, but also inspire others to see beyond their biases. Don't let fear dictate your heart. The world may resist at first, but true love always finds a way to shine through.